And whereas the city recognizes the importance of acknowledging and celebrating the unique heritage, diverse cultures, history, and outstanding achievements of Indigenous peoples. Now, I, therefore, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 11th as Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Kenmore and invite residents to celebrate and honor the history and cultures of Indigenous people. I would like to invite the UW Tribal Liaison, Iisaaksiichaa Ross Braine from the Apsaalooke Nation. Would you like to say a few words, please, Mr. Braine?
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? It feels like a cadence now when we're on these Zoom meetings. I'm really honored to be here and share this with you. I'm also honored to be here as a Kenmore resident. These proclamations are not easily created and they're not easily approved. And so I want to thank each and every one of you council members who approved it. And for those who didn't, that's okay. We can talk about that one day. My traditional name is Iisaaksiichaa. So thank you for Mayor Baker for that. Iisaaksiichaa means a good lad or a good young fella. And while I'm neither good nor am I young any longer, I do my best to earn that name. And I am a citizen of the Apsaalooke. And so I'm an uninvited guest here in this Coast Salish territory. And even though I am a federally recognized tribal citizen, these are not my territories. These are not my rivers, my mountains, and my oceans. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for that. Like, there's a lot that goes into these proclamations, and it has been my pleasure to work with Suzanne Greathouse on this, and to Councilmember Deborah for always coming to check in with us and my little family here. There's not very many of us in the city of Kenmore, but the fact that we have this proclamation makes it feel like home. And that's really hard for us to do. I know a lot of us that come from different areas or from out of country, it feels very alien to be in these places. And I have 2 young children and a wife, and we've made Kenmore our home for the last 7 years. And, there's just a lot that could be said. So I appreciate all of you for this. And even though I am an uninvited guest, I will make sure to share this with our home tribes of the Tulalip and the Snoqualmie. And we will continue working with the Kenmore City Council to move forward with those tribal consultations. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank you all publicly for the repatriation of our name Tuatla from the former Squires Park. That was another beautiful project. And so I just appreciate you. And I hold my hands up to you in thanks and good tidings. And I wish you the best. And thank you so much for having me this evening.
No, thank you, sir, for being here. We are very proud to have you as a resident of Kenmore. And you above everybody, anyone else belongs here. So thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you and all you've contributed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is another proclamation, and this one is All In for Kids. Whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to raise funds and build community partnerships that amplify the Northshore School District priorities for student and teacher education and excellence. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to enhance and inspire learning, remove barriers, and build skills for life for the more than 23,000 students in the Northshore School District. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to enhance and inspire learning by funding innovative classroom grants, world language literature, racial and educational justice, supports accessible and flexible seating, and a variety of literature and support. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to remove barriers by funding backpacks for kids, Opportunity Scholarship Fund, basic needs aid, and homeless services. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to build skills for life by funding student leadership, career days, life skills training, and student recognition at the chamber level. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation represents the public arm of support for public education in the North Shore area, operating separately from the Northshore School District. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation has granted over $2.9 million to schools in the Northshore School District and aspires to provide funding and resources that benefit each of the over 23,000 students and every one of the more than 3,000 teachers in all of the 42 schools and special programs every day. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation is funded solely through private contributions made annually through or from supporters of our schools, which includes students, parents, teachers, staff, alumni, local businesses, regional industry, residents, and community members. Now, therefore, I, David Baker, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October to be All In for Kids Month in the city of Kenmore. And with us, we have Executive Director Carmin Dalziel. Carmin, if you'd like to say a few words, please.
I would. I'm actually going to call forth Patsy Treese, who's also here on the panel. She's a board member and a Kenmore resident. And I just think I want to say thank you and what an honor it is to share this day with the Indigenous Peoples Proclamation. But I'd like you to hear from a board member. But before I pass it, I also just want to thank you for your partnership with the school district and also for trusting us with your very special project to help your residents. But with that, I'm going to have Patsy speak.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, for recognizing the contributions the Northshore Schools Foundation makes towards education in your city. And thank you very much for all the support that the city shows to us. We really appreciate it. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to our wine walk on November 6th. We are constantly raising funds to meet the needs of the students in your area and throughout the Northshore area, and we really appreciate your support. It's wonderful to be recognized on Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much. We are very, very pleased that you were able to join us tonight. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Madam Clerk, if you please.
Thank you, Mayor. We want to welcome all of our community members to the Council's meeting. In this forum, the Council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the Council will be to listen. All comments must be addressed to the Mayor and the City Council. Please use the raise hand feature right now if you wish to speak. I'll acknowledge your request and call your name when it's your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we hear you. Please state your name, city of residence for the record, and keep your comments to the allotted 3 minutes. Your time cannot be granted to another, and your clock time will not be reset unless there are extenuating circumstances and the mayor will allow it. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the clerk or the council in advance. Also, please don't comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as these are quasi-judicial matters, and the council has to limit their communications about them. This meeting is being recorded. We thank you again for taking the time to express your comments. At this time, I see 5 hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and add them to our panelist block, and we're going to take our comments in the following order. Tracy Bonasinski, John Peoples, David Morton, followed by John Culver. Tracy Bonasinski, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Let's go ahead and share a timer. You may begin.
Tracy Bonasinski, Kenmore. In August 2019, just weeks before I met most of you for the first time, I was sitting on a school bus bouncing its way from Smith Island Estuary in Everett to Rainbow Bend on the Cedar River. We were 3 years into an unsettling, destabilizing national experiment, the actions of our federal government feeling like a military shock and awe campaign that targets most often its own citizens and those with least power to punch back. Democratic erosion is real. It was happening and is still happening. And yet on that bus, I felt hope. I felt hope in seeing an estuary given back to itself, restoring ecological functions that are at once good for salmon and people. I felt hope in the company of others who felt learning about watershed health and salmon recovery was worth a Saturday away from whatever else they might be doing. I felt hope in hearing the story of how a group of college students saved a stand of old growth trees from wealthy alumni who would have had them cleared to build a monument to their patronage. Some young people saw wrong, spoke up, engaged their community, and made a difference. The trees are with us, the music hall built elsewhere. The story was told as an illustration of how I might use my own voice to save a wetland. So with encouragement and support, I did. I found my voice, never used in that way before, found others who cared as I did, and I learned the power of community organizing and engaging my local elected officials. That's how we came to know each other, and I'm so glad we do. Since that time, I've come to learn more about the powers and limits of public comment, advisory bodies, and legislative processes. To my mind, they all have a vital place in our democracy. We are stronger in our democracy, more robust when many of us participate in those ways, and we should keep them. And because I've experienced the limits of the democratic tools available to us at the city level, I am interested in the possibilities of tools to which we do not yet have access, such as ballot initiatives. I see such initiatives as a tool for participatory democracy and increased community involvement. To reverse democratic erosion, we need reform on things like campaign finance that are beyond the remit of Kenmore City Council. We also need robust processes for increased meaningful community participation that allow all of us access to building a world where people are fully liberated, live with dignity, and thrive. It is within our power to build more of those processes into our self-governance. Many surrounding cities have access to ballot initiatives, including Lake Forest Park, Bothell, and Woodinville. Kenmore could too through an ordinance approved by council majority. It might sound lofty to speak of ballot initiatives as a pathway to more just, inclusive, vibrant communities, but so is the ongoing experiment of democracy, full of lofty, noble ideas that engage all of us in an aspirational experiment to which we must constantly recommit. Democracy isn't a finished product, but something we must embody and act out day after day by showing up and figuring out how to live together for the common good. It's messy and hard. It's also worth it. I would like to end with the words of Honorable Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, writing for the majority in Arizona State Legislature versus the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. She said, "The framers may not have imagined the modern initiative process, but the invention of the initiative was in full harmony with the Constitution's conception of the people as the font of governmental power. I am deeply appreciative of the opportunity to come before you tonight and for your consideration on ballot initiatives for Kenmore. Thank you."
Thank you, Ms. Bonasinski. John Peoples.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you. Go ahead.
All right, John Peoples, Kenmore. Good evening, Kenmore City Council. I trust you're all in good spirits on this brilliant evening with Jupiter and Saturn in the southern sky. I begin by acknowledging that we live on American land, private property for the use and enjoyment of its rightful owners, and Kenmore municipal property for the enjoyment of all of the general public, regardless of mask or vaccination status. Special thanks to the memory of men like Watson Squire and Tracy Owen for generosity and commitment to the municipal life of Kenmore's residents that benefit us all to this day. Next, I'd like to join the City Council in wishing everyone a happy Columbus Day and in acknowledging the rich contributions to American civic life of our Italian neighbors. Christopher Columbus was neither the saint nor demon he has been made out to be, but rather something in between, a brave and enterprising human being, little better or worse than anyone here today. When we honor him, we honor his spirit and positive contributions to world culture. If you must throw stones in your glass house, I just ask that you take it easy on the Mayans and not knock them too hard for their mass slaughter and human sacrifice of their conquered neighboring tribes. And while you're at it, do take it easy on Chief Seattle and not put him down too hard for warring against his Puget Sound neighbors and for once being a slave owner. And do spare the Carib people of the Lesser Antilles for once enjoying roasted human flesh from time to time. Lastly, I want to implore the City Council to never institute a vaccine mandate or testing mandate in order to fully enjoy municipal life. The end of the pandemic is ahead, and such measures and the vile indignities that accompany them are completely unnecessary and sometimes fatal. It has been acknowledged by the county and the state that Jessica Berg Wilson, an otherwise healthy mother of 2 young girls and wife to a loving husband, was killed by the COVID vaccine that she was bullied into taking under threat of not being allowed to participate in her little girl's school classroom. The government proponents of the vaccine mandate share in the culpability for her death and for the many motherless years ahead for her girls. I propose a moment of silence for this local woman who was bullied to death by a fear-based illogical mandate. I am waiting. I'm also, my internet went out on me, but I'm disappointed that I didn't hear a flag salute tonight. Looking forward to the Pledge of Allegiance. And please do not give any more money in compensation to the members of the DEI task force. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples. David Morton.
You're welcome.
Good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. Cadman's asphalt plant in Kenmore sends toxic and carcinogenic air pollution to their downwind neighbors for hours every week. I'll take just 3 minutes to talk about it. I'm concerned about this public health issue in Kenmore. Everyone deserves the right to live a healthy, productive life. Cadman's asphalt plant has been creating a huge stench that at times makes the air nearly unbreathable at homes and businesses. This isn't just a nuisance odor like you might get from a soup factory or a composting facility. Tons of volatile organic chemicals, or VOCs, from the evaporation of petroleum solvents are emitted by the asphalt facility. These VOCs affect the health of many people. VOCs emitted by the plant are not visible. Much like our atmosphere is invisible, many gases are invisible. At the asphalt plant, asphalt binder arrives at Cadman in tank trucks. The binder is often simply called oil, which can be either undiluted asphalt cement or cutback asphalt. Medium curing cutback asphalt is asphalt cement diluted with kerosene. When the binder is mixed with hot aggregate in a bug mill mixer, the evaporation of kerosene emits tons of VOCs into the air. For estimates of the plant's air pollution to be even close to accurate, Cadman must use undiluted asphalt cement. PSCAA knows that, but does not ensure that Cadman uses undiluted asphalt cement, claiming that DOT periodically tests Cadman's binder. 2 months ago, I requested public records of DOT's results of testing Cadman's asphalt binders. I'm still waiting for DOT's response. The public does not know exactly what arrives at Cadman's plant in the tank trucks. No one knows exactly what comes out of the plant stack or even how much, because the amount and type of VOCs emitted by the plant is not tested or monitored. The asphalt plant in Kenmore releases unmeasured tons of chemicals to the air each year, likely including many cancer-causing toxic air pollutants, such as arsenic, benzene, formaldehyde, cadmium, VOCs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, and particles smaller than PM10. Exposure to these air toxics may cause cancer, central nervous system problems, liver damage, and respiratory problems. Somehow, the current system has failed to protect this community from the daily health hazards of asphalt plant pollution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. John Culver.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Good evening, Council. My name is John Culver. I'm a resident of Kenmore. I want to speak tonight in support of bringing citizens' initiatives to the city of Kenmore. Initiatives provide grassroots members of the community a mechanism to pass new legislation by collecting petition signatures in support of a ballot measure, to then be put before the voters for approval. Across the state of Washington, a majority of cities, totaling over 62% of voters statewide, currently have this power, including our neighbors in Bothell, Lake Forest Park, Shoreline, Woodinville, Mount Lake Terrace, Briar, Edmonds, Mill Creek, Bellevue, Seattle, and many more. The city of Kenmore was itself incorporated through a dedicated initiative process, and after collecting the necessary petition signatures, it was passed by the voters with over 70% approval in 1997. But despite our city's formative history with the initiative process, we don't currently have these powers to enact new city legislation. But state law does provide two well-defined options for us to adopt, either by a vote of the council or, fittingly enough, through an initiative process where residents can collect petition signatures and then vote to adopt these powers as a community. What could be passed with such a process once enacted here? We can look to other cities for popular examples. Seattle's Initiative 122, the Honest Elections Democracy Voucher Program, won with over 63% approval, and has helped reduce the outsized influence of big money in politics in our local elections. Seattle also voted to protect hotel workers' rights with Initiative 124, which was approved by 77%. Tacoma's Proposition 1 raised the city's minimum wage with 71% approval back in 2015. And Federal Way voted to protect rights of renters in 2019, which passed by 55%. These are demonstrably popular pieces of legislation, often centered in creating more equitable outcomes for the community. I should note here too, the initiative process is protected by both the parameters of the state law, as well as the checks and balances provided by our courts, who have rightly overturned those initiatives which do not pass legal muster. Kenmore has a rich history of its community taking an active role in our local civic and political processes. And I believe it's time for Kenmore to join the majority of Washingtonians in adopting initiative powers. I would encourage the city council members to support it should the opportunity come before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Next, we'd like to hear from Stacy Valenzuela, followed by Janet Hayes and Vicky Greyland. Stacy Valenzuela.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. As we acknowledge and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, my thoughts go to the Duwamish people who are still asking for federal recognition today, 155 years later. The Duwamish were known in the area here, Kenmore. The city should consider paying rent to the Duwamish instead of giving additional funding to clubs or groups that have received funds in the past years. Perhaps Kenmore and King County should give some of the natural habitat known originally as Auisatqii's Park back to the Duwamish. The city should be an example for climate change, why they work on the Climate Action Plan. Reverse or stop their plans to cement our natural habitat for the Kenmore water activities or any other water club. Our city could set an example in climate change by adding the required testing of the asphalt emissions and request a health evaluation study, as well as the required cleanup by commercial sites along the Slough, Sammamish River, and Lake Washington, starting with Log Boom Park, as well as only using non-contamination forums to control weed and algae blooms. These efforts could enhance our salmon, wildlife, waterways, and ecosystems. Testing of our air, land, and water prior and after these processes to record the difference these changes make. In the best interests of all and protection of our public health, based on the numerous requests from our environmental concerned residents and local organizations, we call for testing and remediation of all contaminated and Matka land sites in Kenmore. We ask that the city of Kenmore put in an immediate moratorium of 1 year to review memos about these Matka sites. Since the governor has failed to take action, we call on Kenmore to themselves take the steps to enact an emergency ban of all non-necessary burning, including the asphalt plant emissions on any wildfire smoke, high air quality ban days for the safety of our residents' health and climate action. We need the city to hold their staff to be examples and take action to conserve and protect our environment. We also ask that the city council put two groups first, the majority of our current residents and the Duwamish that were the first residents of Kenmore. I also support any of the statements for the ballot initiative as well as climate action today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. Janet Hayes.
Hi, Janet Hayes. I'm a resident of Kenmore, and I want to thank everyone that's spoken this evening. I especially support David Morton, and I also was glad to hear someone mention petition signatures. Thank you very much, John. The fact that we have been stopped twice while trying to do a petition just to get questions answered, but to also make a change. We were stopped from doing it. That was about 11 years ago when I belonged to the North Lake Neighbors Association. The second thing I want to speak about is there I have been watching the properties in my area and noticed one had a public notice that did not have any folders. It's at 181st and 62nd Avenue Northeast in Kenmore. So I did a little research on that property and found out that Able Pest Control had used that property as a business, and I didn't know that much about it. I found out it was a Mootka site, and it also in 2012, when we did sediment testing in the waters in Kenmore, Lake Washington, we were told that that might be the source of dioxins in high numbers, too high, were found at Harbor Village Marina. So I'm questioning the notice of application and the public notice. I would like to know when this was published and where. I would like to know what the PSP21 stands for. I understood it had to do with Mootka sites or critical areas. And I'm also questioning why there was never any folders in there until I again went by the spot. It's just a block from me. And I'm almost done. And I finally got a folder and saw that the comment time was the 20th of September, which I'd missed by 2 days. That is a Mootka site. I would like to see the paperwork and understand why we aren't going to do any kind of remediation. What's planned for that property? I saw the development plans. So I'm questioning the city. Thank you.
Vicky Greyland. Vicky Greyland.
Hi, I'm Vicky Greyland and I live in Kenmore. I first want to say last week when Rod Dembowski was at City Council, he praised the City Council and he forgot to praise the citizens of Kenmore. I think the citizens here are fantastic, and so many good things come from individual citizen research and individual citizens advocacy for everything from good traffic to cleaning up the Sammamish River and climate change mitigation. And I want to say I was at the Climate Action Plan Community Workshop last week, and I was very impressed with the way the staff handled it. Everyone was heard, and I was impressed with the other citizens who attended. People were heard, and people had good ideas. I really like Stacy Valenzuela's idea of the city paying rent to the Duwamish tribe. You can go right to their website. It's easy to set up. I mean, you can go to the Duwamish website. I also want to say how grateful I am that we are moving forward with restoring the Sammamish River. I asked Richard Sawyer about it during the Climate Action Workshop, and he said he's already in meetings with other towns. So I'm very happy with the quick action on that. And I'm also very happy that we finally have an integrated pest management plan being presented tonight. I haven't had a chance to go into it in detail, but I will. Then I think these are all good signs that Kenmore is a shining example of good environmental stewardship, and it needs to be better, but we have great citizens who will keep you on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greyland. Mayor Baker, I see no further hands raised.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Is there anybody else wishing to be heard?
Are there any other guests that wish to speak tonight?
Hearing nobody coming forward, thank you all very much for speaking out tonight. We appreciate your involvement. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So approved. Councilmember File.
And I'll second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the business agenda.
I think we may have lost the mayor for a second. So
Yes.
look, there he is. Are you connected, Mr. Mayor? Can you hear us?
I'm connected. Yeah.
Okay. You cut out for a second.
When I switch back and forth, the video goes out when I switch to the agenda. And when I'm off the agenda, I come back on. So that's what's going on there. All right. Finance Director.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Welcome to our financial presentation for the first 6 months of the biennium. This presentation is as of June 30, 2021. Tonight, we'll be reviewing the results of operations for revenues, expenditures, fund balance for the general fund, streets, surface water management. We'll be reviewing revenues, expenses, and cash position for other funds as well, the real estate excise tax, the transportation benefit districts, which is our vehicle license fee, and then impact for parks and transportation. We'll be looking at an overview of the city's cash and investment portfolio, as well as some economic data. And I'm going to share my screen. Can you see the presentation? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Slideshow. Okay. So we'll be starting this presentation with the general fund. As mentioned before, this presentation is for the period through June 30 of 2021, with 25% of the biennium budget elapsed. I can't see it. Okay. With regards to revenues, the projected biennium, on this slide, you can see the major revenue sources for the general fund. In the first column, we have the major revenue sources. Second column is the budget, the allocated amount to the budget. The third column is the year to date at June 30, and then the percentage. With regards to the major revenues, we ended the year, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, so with regards to the general fund, through June 30, we have received a little bit less than $7 million. That's 26% of the amount that was budgeted for the biennium, in the amount of $27.1 million. The major revenue, some of the major revenue sources within the general fund include property taxes, which comprises 40% of the total budget, followed by sales tax, which comprises 20% of the total general fund budget. With regards to property taxes, we have received $2.9 million, which is 26% of the amount that we budgeted, and in line with what we should be expecting at this time of the year. With regards to sales tax, we have received $1.7 million. That is 33% of the amount we budgeted, in the amount of $5.3 million. It should be noted that the $1.7 million is almost $500,000 higher. That's 42% higher than the amount received during the same time period last calendar year in 2020. This trend continues through July and August and September. Sales tax revenues have been very positive this year, and they continue. A comparison of sales tax revenues, tax receipts through June of 21 in comparison with June of 2020 demonstrates that the major categories where we see the sales tax increase include construction, retail, and services. For example, construction receipts are higher by $260,000 from the amount received last year. That's an increase of 111%. Retail includes 136,000 higher than last year. That's a 28% increase. And then services, 66% increase, $66,000 and a 19% increase from the amount received last year. Sorry, I can't see you. If you have any questions, please, I can't see you. So let me know.
I don't see any hands raised at this point.
Okay, good. Okay, so moving on with regards to utility taxes, that's in line with what we should be receiving at this time. We have received $589,000, that's 25% of the budget. Development fees and permits, we have received $572,000, that's 33% of the amount budgeted. This is another category that's doing very well this year. Franchise fees, franchise from water, sewer, cable, Ziply, we have received $426,000. That's 24% of the amount budgeted for the biennium. Intergovernmental grants, funds and grants, we have received 26% of the amount budgeted. Other taxes were at 22%. This is the one category that has declined during the COVID period, 2020 and 21. That's business and occupation and gambling taxes. With regards to investment interest, that we have 79,000. However, we do an allocation to other funds, and we do that once a year. And that number will be a lot lower once we do the allocation to the other funds at the end of the year. Transfers in and other revenues, we show 44,000. Again, this is another category where the transfers in approximately $2.1 million comes in from other funds for allocations, etc. And we do that transfer at the end of the year, once a year at the end of the year. And so this is one category that will be increasing later on in the year. But overall, we're on track with 26% of the biennium revenues already received and in place. Very good trends with regards to sales tax, development fees, doing very well. With regards to expenditures, again, the categories, the first column is the various departments within the general fund, followed by the allocation in the budget for each individual department. And then the third column is the amount spent to date. The city has spent in the general fund $5.1 million. That's 19% of the amount allocated for the biennium. As you can see on the right-hand side, most of the departments are within the amount expected at this time of the year or below, so 25% or less. The only categories that you will see that are maybe higher or For example, this human resources, there was no allocation, separate allocation for human resources. This is a new department. We have spent to date $30,168. However, we'll be doing a budget adjustment at the end of the year, in November, prior to the end of the year, to allocate for 21 as well as for 2022. The allocation for HR used to reside in the Finance and Administration division, and so we'll be carving out some of the funds from Finance and allocating it to separately to the Human Resources Department. Legal is another department that we have spent $186,000. That's 33% of the budget, the $565,000. However, this is a department where expenditures vary depending on the amount of workload cases. All the other departments, such as council at 24%, city manager at 19% of the amount budgeted, clerk 20, finance 25. Again, everything. Some of these might be lower than the 25%, but it could be that some of the expenditures come in during the second half of the year. I know, for example, public safety at $1.5 million. The major item here in public safety is the contract for police services. And during the first 5 months of the year, we didn't see any expenditures. The first bill normally comes in May after the King County approves their budget and we have a final contract amount for police services. Okay. With regards to the general fund, we have reserves, and as you know, the city has a policy that the city shall maintain at least the 20% of operating expenditures as a reserve as a minimum. And for the general fund, the 20% is 2.3 would be $2.3 million. The actual fund balance is 2.7, was 2.7 as of December 2020. And that's after a $2.3 million loan to the Sammamish Bridge Fund, which was repaid in 2021. Again, the reserves are used to offset revenue shortfalls, payment of expenditures if there's a cash flow shortage or unanticipated emergency, as well as for example, loans to capital project funds, while the city grants or finances are grants come in or finances are obtained. But it's always a good idea to have a good fund balance, strong fund balance, and the city is in that position at this point in time. Moving on to the street fund. The street fund shows revenues of June of $730,000. That's 24% of the amount budgeted. That's including a 25% of the transfer that is normally made from the general fund. We have budgeted $1.5 million. 25% of that is $390,000. Revenues, 24% again, within the range expected at this time of the year. Total expenditures, 20%. We have spent $659,000 of the $3.3 million that we budgeted. The ending fund balance for the street fund at $1.7 million. One of the revenue sources, fuel tax, so $1.7 million is good, even though the fuel tax within one of the revenue sources within the street fund continues to decline. This revenue source declined from 2% in 2019, 11% in 2020, and then for the first 6 months of 21, declined by 7%. But still able to maintain a good fund balance at this point in time. Then we have our surface water management fund. In this fund, we have the main revenue source, storm drain fees. We have received $1.5 million. That's 31% of the total revenue budgeted for the biennium. With regards to expenditures, we have spent only 8%, 632,000, but we have transfers to budgeted within the $7.9 million transfer to surface water management capital and the general fund in the amount, combined amount of $3.8 million. And those will be done prior to the end of the year. The working capital in this fund, $3.1 million as of June of 2020. Some of the other funds are real estate excise tax and transportation benefit district. We have received the real estate excise tax. We budgeted 2.1 million for the biennium, 1 million per year. Year to date, as of June 30 of 21, we have received $1.1 million. That's 52% of the amount budgeted for the biennium. This is the revenues this is one of the revenue sources that are being very positive in 2021. We'll be bringing a budget adjustment in November during our presentation to update our revenue projections and budget for 21 and 22 based on the trends. So we'll be upping our budget to 4 million actually. Transportation benefit district. That's your vehicle license fee. The budget was zero for this category. And the reason is that during the budget process, the outcome of I-976, which was trying to cancel the vehicle license fee, was unknown at that point in time. Being conservative, we budgeted $0. However, the courts voted down the proposed initiative, and so the revenues are coming in. And as of June, we have received 185,000. 185,000. The cash balance in this fund is 312. Now, transportation, this revenue source in the past has funded street activities. So once a year, we make a transfer of approximately 350,000 to the street fund. And that's another budget adjustment that we'll be bringing in November. Now that the revenues are coming in, to transfer those funds to the street fund. Now, with regards to impact fees, again, positive impact fee for parks. We budgeted 175,000 for the biennium, and as of June, we have received 109,000. That's 62% of the total. The cash balance for impact parks is 448,000. For transportation impact, we have received 41% of the amount budgeted. That's 267,000, and this fund has $2.9 million in cash. Now, moving on to investments. Our investment portfolio totals $30.3 million. It is made up of agency securities. In the agency securities category, we have $5.1 million in Fannie Mae, that's Federal National Mortgage Association, FFCB, which is the Federal Farm Credit Bank, and then treasuries. So $5.1 million there, with an average maturity of 1 to 3 years, and yield of anywhere 0.18 to 0.30. We also hold $11.8 million in the state local government investment pool. with rates ranging, oh, I can't see it here, 0.08, actually 0.08. We have an additional $13.4 million in cash, savings, and CD in Banner Bank and other rates 0.3, 0.9%. With regards to economic data, as you saw in the previous, some of these yields are very low in comparison to what we have received in the past. And the reason, well, that's just a reflection of the economy. And for example, our investment return in 2019, 2.55 versus 0.08 as of June 30, 21 in our state local government investment pool. I had mentioned this in our previous presentation, just as an example, bond proceeds decline in interest earned from 188,000 in 2019 to 52,000 in 2020. The federal funds rate, again, this is economic data, the federal funds rate set by the Federal Open Market Committee at the Federal Reserve has continued to maintain the rate of 0 to 0.25, quarter of 1% since April of 2020. Again, this is the lowest level since the Great Recession in 2008, and it's expected to remain at the same level through 2021. U.S. Treasuries yield optimist economic forecast for 2 to 5 year securities, and those have increased to 0.14% in their yield. With regards to unemployment, 6.20 as of February 2021, down to 590 in July, and down to 480 in September. Not at the levels we were prior to COVID, but still good as in the way that it's declining. With regards to the Dow Jones Industrial Average at 34,000, actually 34,688 as of June, and still about at the same level at 34,746 as of October. Questions?
Is there any Councilmember Marshall? No, not okay.
Wait, I got it. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, my mic was stuck.
And then Councilmember Kugler.
Did the public safety breakdown include courts, public defense, and prosecution, if you have that at all?
The amount that was in the presentation, let me see. Public safety, the $1.5 million, that includes everything. The police services contract, we budgeted for the biennium $9.1 million, and the police service contract is $7.9 million, of which we have paid 1.4 through June.
Okay, thanks. And if you have anything on the courts cost and public defense or prosecution, if it's in that budget, but if you don't have it now, that's fine.
I can look for it quickly, but no, okay.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Thank you, Leticia, for that presentation. I just have a couple of questions based off of the financial report that was written from the business agenda. And this is for me to better understand some of the numbers. So when it comes to sales tax revenue, what's under construction? I sort of thought it was construction materials, but then later in the report, I saw that that might be considered wholesale. So what is under the construction category that's seen such increases in sales tax?
Yes. Per the Department of Revenue, construction includes, for example, all customers. Basically, it's the sales tax on construction services on the contract price for construction services. That's for construction, building, repair, improvements, decorations, all of that is included. And you're right, there is another category, which is, I think, wholesale, and that's where the actual lumber, concrete is included. But this would be only for construction contracts, the sales tax on the that amount.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And then the other question I have is about franchise fees. I just see that the projection for revenue is linear, and then there it looks like it varied a little bit. And I'm just curious whether that means that the cost is based on some actual usage.
Oh, okay. What it is this is a revenue source. It's made up of water and sewer franchise, cable franchise. The water, sewer, and cable franchise come in by quarter. We received the first payment in January, and then you see the trend going straight, and then 2 months after that, we receive the next quarter's allocation, 3 months after that, and so you see it jumping, and then it goes straight again. So that's a reflection. That graph is showing the revenues that come in January, stay flat, and then the jump after the second quarter, and so on to the end of the year. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember O'Kane, did you have a question?
No, I don't at this
Any
time.
other questions? Deputy Mayor.
So thank you very much for the presentation. These are always great to look at, and this one is nice to see with the numbers coming in where they are. Property tax is usually really predictable because, you know, we just set the levy and that's what we collect. We brought in 26% when we're a quarter of the way through the budget. Is that due to new construction that wasn't anticipated or something else?
Let me see. Let me think. So you're right. This is a levy that is set in advance. It's budget driven. The actual amount might be an increase in construction. However, there is an estimate when we set out at the beginning of the year, estimating our revenues and doing our calculations. There is an estimate. There's an amount for new construction. This might be above and beyond what was originally budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
I can jump in too.
Yes.
People generally pay their property tax twice a year. I think it's April and October, if I'm not wrong. Sometimes people have the choice of just paying their whole year property tax in April. And so you might see a little bit of that going on in the first part of the year.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. So would this be the stage in which we could amend our budget?
I'll be bringing a separate presentation in November. Yes, along with a capital improvement review, and we'll be bringing the various budget adjustments, not only for the CIP as well as for additional expenditures and so on. Anything else other that is not already in the budget, yes, it'll be presented for your review and consideration in November.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I don't see any.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Is that complete? Does that complete your report?
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is development services for resolution number 21-370, adopting the 2022 fee schedule. Mr. Hampson, and I believe you have other people there with you.
Yeah, I think that I'll just go ahead and get started. Good evening,
Ms.
Mayor
Gardner.
and Council. Hello. Yeah, I'm not Brian, but Tila Gardner here from Development Services. I'm the permit coordinator. So I'm going to present the agenda bill on the screen so you can see it. So tonight I have the 2022 fee schedule up for you. It's updated annually as was provided for in the ordinance in 2002. So development services, just for a little bit of background, we're kind of the keepers of the schedule itself, but not all of these revisions and additions are requested by our department. So there are some other folks here, I think, that can answer some questions depending on what they are. So just looking down the list, we are asking to increase the development services fees, section 4 by the consumer price index, which is 6.3%. So that does include transportation and park impact fees, but not school impact fees. It does also not include any appeal fees, right-of-way fees, so those listed there. And then for 2 and 3, these are kind of pass-through costs. So the second one, the line item there is the affordable housing monitoring fee from Arch. So this fee is to cover Arch's cost of monitoring the units for compliance with income and affordability restrictions. And then number 3 is a King County cost, basically multifamily tax exemption application fee. And then number 4 and 5 there, that was just kind of cleaning up 2 different sections. We had binding site plan in 2 different places. So we just kind of cleaned up the language and the titles there. And now they're only in on page 5 of the fee schedule. And then, so for item 6, the school impact fees were revised per Northshore School District's capital facility plan. So the cost for a single family unit is $18,891. It was up from $17,080. And then the multifamily is $1,392, which was $1,504 for 2020. Number 7 is just to kind of clean up some of the language again to make it a little clearer that it says includes townhomes now instead of just townhomes. It did a little bit appear that it was only for townhomes. And then number 8 and 9 are for right-of-way permits. So we consolidated all the different types, A, B, and C. Those are just limited use. So they're all under that category now. We added a line item for beautification, even though those are at no cost. And then all of those limited use, access, encroachment, they all require a technology fee because they're processed through mybuildingpermit.com into development services permitting software Trackit. And then we changed the reference to not requiring the technology fee to a double asterisk because there's kind of a lot of asterisks in there. Number 9, you can see, is for utility right-of-way permits or franchise permits. There are 2 new line items there, permit extension and then work without a permit or work without a job start notice. And then the last one is just for the surface water annual service rates. That was approved in 2018, so it's just up again for this year, for 2022. Were there any questions? I think I can't hear you, Mayor. If you're...
I'm not seeing everybody. You're sharing the screen.
Here, I can stop share if that helps.
No, okay. Yeah, I got it now. So you can continue to share if you want to. Is the council have any questions? I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised, but I do have a couple. So let me get to my notes here. Bear with me a second. So on page 10 of 27 on the fee schedule, I'm looking in particular the temporary mobile home permit for hardship. I'm not understanding why that's higher than the temporary mobile home permit. Why is something for hardship higher?
Brian, did you want to take that one? I'm not sure.
I was waiting for you to ask if you needed help. When we
Okay.
studied our fees, Mayor, a couple years ago, we based
Right.
the cost of the fees on how much work and time it took to process. And so the temporary
Right.
hardship permit takes a little bit more time than the other one that you're comparing it to. I'm not seeing exactly which one you're comparing it to, but that's how we came up with the fees.
Yeah, I'm under mobile homes on page 10 of 180 of 211, or on the fee schedule, page 10 of, let me see the number at the bottom of the page, 10 of 17. And it's under mobile homes, like I said. There's a mobile home permit that's 908, and then there is also a temporary mobile home permit for hardship, and it's also 908. So I'm wondering, what is the hardship in this instance?
Sometimes people might need to put up a mobile home on their property to take care of a loved one or a family member for a little bit of time. And we have a section in the zoning code that allows them to do this for a period of time over 6 months. And this would be the fee that would be associated to it.
Okay, I guess I'm just a little curious as to why, if there's a true hardship here, why we're not doing more to help them out.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's not strictly a financial situation. It could be also, space needed for family members and whatnot. But I mean, now would be the time if you wanted to lower this. You could definitely discuss it and set it to what you want it to be.
Well, I certainly would like to talk, I certainly understand the hardship side of it better, because given the times that we're in right now, I'm concerned about seeing a high rate on something that is a hardship. Also,
I was going to mention, we've done similar adjustments to other fees too. So you guys have set precedents to those types of situations before.
okay. Well, I don't, if council certainly wants to discuss it, I mean, I'd be happy to, because I'm concerned somebody with hardship, they're paying more than anybody else. Council member File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I'm really glad you brought up this issue. I think it's important to our community at large, and I would welcome this discussion. Just because a decision has been made in the past to, walk one way doesn't mean that since we're practicing our scope of using our diversity and equity lens, that we do not take a closer look at this. So I would be happy to take a closer look and possibly even recommend a reduction in that fee and an option of a waiver for extreme hardship.
Councilmember Marshall. Your mic is out, Councilmember Marshall.
Oh, I agree.
Now
with
it's on.
I agree with the mayor and council member File.
Councilmember Kugler.
I just want to better understand how this hardship term is being used here. It seems funny that the temporary mobile home permit rate is less than the temporary mobile home permit for hardship. So I guess I feel like I need more information about what this means.
Yeah, when
Right.
we looked at our fees, we looked at how much work and time and resources we needed to do it, and that's how we calculated the fees. There's a couple extra steps that the staff has to do when it comes to the hardship permits that we don't typically do in a mobile home park.
Mobile home parks are pretty straightforward. You could get a building permit and go through a couple of reviews, planning and planning and building. These hardships require public notifications, those types of things. So it's a little bit more work, but that's the reason for the little bit higher fee.
Okay. I'd still like to look at reducing that fee, but is this, yes, Deputy Mayor?
Just for historical context, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hampson, but a few years ago, we decided to stake these permit fees at, I believe it was 80% of the cost of the staff time generally. Am I remembering that correctly?
A little bit, yeah. There was two different areas that we looked at. We looked at the land use fees and also the construction fees. For the construction fees, we went higher. We went to 90%. And for the land use, we went lower with the 80%. And so this would have been more hybrid of both a land use and a construction permit. But yeah, you're right for the most part.
Okay.
Similarly, on other, hardship type fees, such as appeals or I can't think of any other ones, but Tila might know some better ones that we have cheaper fees for that make more sense because people might be going through some harder times. Those fees have been in the range of $110, I want to say.
Is that a question for me?
How much is the
appeal fees?
125.
Yeah, I want to say 125 or 126.
Councilmember O'Kane?
I have 1 to 2 questions here. First would be, how frequently do we issue the temporary mobile home permits in the event of hardship per year? What is the frequency of that? And I would agree, just on the surface, thinking, gosh, it doesn't make sense that something for hardship would be more expensive. But based on what I'm starting to hear, there are expenses there, but maybe these are expenses that the city can bear the burden of. But I was just curious about, do we get 1, 20? How many requests for a hardship permit do we get in a year?
I would probably estimate about 1 a year. What do you think, Braine?
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. So just to be clear, this appeal, they pay the appeal fee and then apply for the hardship. Is that how this is working?
No, I was just given the appeal fee as an example of something that you've done before to lower the fee, to not be so burdensome on people. And so, that might be a suggested number to go with, since it kind of is in line with the other fees that you lowered.
Maybe it would make sense to have a line item called extreme hardship and that a small nominal fee so that it's particular to certain deeper setbacks, whether they're medical issues or a strong financial hardship. Since the rate was set at 8%, let's remember that our individuals who live in our affordable mobile home living areas, developments, that they are often living at 30% below the mean or just around the cusp of. So I think we have to be logical and work with our community and not against the grain in this particular sense. I mean, if we're going to follow our tune of diversity, equity, and inclusion and really kind of work on our end of things, correcting our scope and improving our opportunities for the community.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, and this kind of raised a kind of broader issue for me. Do we have a mechanism kind of in general for lowering a fee or waiving a fee if there is financial hardship? I mean, I can imagine in this case for mobile home, the temporary permit, that's one example of a permit fee that in which there might be financial hardship, but might there be others? And should we just have more of a broader, I guess that raised the question, should we have a broader policy rather than just specific to this one fee?
I'll let Tila go first. I have my thoughts, but Tila really deals with the customers more frequently. And so she hears really what they're thinking about the cost and stuff of the fees. And there are a lot of instances when we wish we had a mechanism that we could reduce some of the fees sometimes, but I'll let Tila explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to mind kind of in line with the mobile home discussion is there is one of the mobile home parks that's located on the slough. So some of the homes in that area have to apply for shoreline exemptions, which can be very difficult, especially if they don't speak English as their first language. But that's a pretty significant cost for them, especially if it's kind of a smaller alteration to because we don't permit the interior remodels of those structures, but any sort of additions that they wanted to do. So I think that if you're comfortable thinking about how we would be able to determine what a hardship means and have some criteria for that, I think that's a great idea. Just in general, to allow someone maybe some flexibility, because ultimately, we want them to get a permit and we want them to have a safe structure. So I think having that option there would be awesome.
Councilmember File.
So it sounds like what we're hearing is that there's a need to have and develop a better description and a pathway. And so what I think would be helpful here is maybe to refer this specific issue, to the DEI task force or to our DEI a specialist for review, and flag it and mark it and see if there can be a developed solution to come back to us.
I really think that if we want to lower these fees, we have the authority to do these fees. And rather than task another group to do it for us, we ought to be doing it ourselves. So, Deputy Mayor?
I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that folks are interested in a broader based way of lowering fees for folks in financial hardship. Maybe I'm not hearing that, but that's what I think I'm hearing from my colleagues. Instead of lowering individual fees that are on this list right now, implementing a way to address low-income folks who are working on their homes and doing that sort of thing in a way that's equitable. So I would propose that we pass this fee schedule now and then come back with a proposal on how to address the larger situation in a more complete manner, rather than individually going through line items and adjusting.
Right.
fees.
No, I agree with you completely. That does make sense. I'm seeing a lot of nodding going on here. So, Ms. Gardner or Mr. Hampson, you guys will bring that back to us at some point of how we can address some of the financial hardships that we see, even though we're going to pass this fee schedule?
Yeah, we'll discuss it with Rob Carlindsey, the city manager, come up with a good strategy and timing and all that stuff, and make sure that we bring it back to you in the near future.
Yeah, because this doesn't go into effect until January 1st anyway, so there's certainly time to come back with something to sort of cover this financial hardship. side of things. And I was going to go back to that, what you brought up about the appeals for the hearing examiner's fees. That's what we ended up with, was the $128, right? From what it was.
As I
That's
recall,
4-page.
yeah, I think it was 126.
Yeah, that's 4
Yeah, so
pages
that's-
before this last one.
That was in the 2021
Right.
schedule.
Okay, but that's the number we arrived on a few years ago when this came up.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and so now that I'm looking at it, I did write in the agenda bill to not include appeal fees, and I did update that cost. So if we would prefer to keep
Fine.
it at 128, I guess
That's what I
accepting it
wanted to know.
with
What number is that on
revision.
the page, Tila?
I think appeal fees are in the beginning of the document. Where did it go?
That is on page 6 of 17.
Mm-hmm.
It's labeled appeals.
Yeah, that was an error on my part, so I think that should be 128.
Yeah, that shouldn't have got the.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't have. It was definitely not intended. I think I just got carried away with my Excel updates.
Yeah, because on page 6 of 17, it is 128.
$128 or 136?
I think that you might be looking at the 2021
I'm looking at 2021 schedule.
fee
Okay.
schedule, Mayor.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that's
see. Yeah. So in the 2022 schedule, page 6 should be corrected to show 128 appeal to hearing examiner.
Fine. Okay. So then the, let me get back here. The chair would entertain a motion unless there's further questions to approve resolution 21-370 for the city of Kenmore, adopting our 2022 fee schedule. Is there a motion?
I believe
Excuse me, Mr.
Councilmember
Mayor.
File and O'Kane's had their hands up.
Yeah, I just saw that. Councilmember File, then Councilmember O'Kane.
Thank you. I have a question about Exhibit E memo with the Public Works. Tila, it looks like there's a standard permit for right-of-way use and permit extension that usually typically happens. So right now it looks like we have a 6-month permit that is released to people when they apply for it. Then there's a 3-month extension without cost. And the new proposal of replacing all that with a 6-month extension at $300. When I look at this, I think it's better to have a couple options here. So if there is something that's a mild case and it needs that short 3-month, to keep that, and then also have this additional one-time 6-month extension if somebody really wants to go that extra mile and just opt for that additional fee of $300. That makes sense. Not all projects have to have a 6-month extension to complete. So I'd rather preserve the 1 3-month waiver and then add a 6-month extension with the same proposed cost, just as an option. I mean, a resident, a homeowner, or landowner could choose a pathway that best serves them. I don't know what my colleagues.
Yeah, just to clarify, so these were fees requested by Public Works. That specifically is for utility right-of-way permits. So it would only ever be a utility or franchise requesting that extension.
Okay. Then I misinterpreted it. So thank you.
Councilmember O'Kane.
And I just had a question that crossed my mind as I've been thinking about this. Has the city ever considered, or is this something that we might want to consider in the future, maybe discounted permit fees for environmentally sensitive building construction, like LEED certified buildings, or green HVAC systems and that sort of thing, like heat duct, air pumps and that sort of thing? Would this be, I think this would be a bit late to be bringing this into this fee schedule, but just as a concept for future, I'd really love to see us have some progressive fee schedules for climate action type building and permitting and things like that. So is that something we could do in this space, and have we done it in any areas that you know of?
No, we haven't done anything like that in the past, but to me, it sounds like something that would be really good to look at with the climate action plan, and also different fees and maybe credits people could get.
Yeah.
Again, it would be similar to what Deputy Mayor suggested. Instead of going through them item by item, having something bigger overall policy, discussing it would probably be a bit more effective.
Yeah, it felt a little too big for this discussion and where we're at in the process, but I would really love for us to go in that direction if that's a possibility. So thank you.
All right. If that's all, the chair will entertain a motion to approve resolution number 21-370 of the City of Kenmore, Washington, adopting the City of Kenmore's 2022 fee schedule. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And I'll second.
Mayor
all
Baker,
right.
I have a question. Did
Yes.
you want to include the change to the fee in your motion? Because it sounds like you want to approve the resolution as amended.
We want to move the resolution, but we want staff to come back to us with how we're going to handle financially challenged individuals.
However, I think if I hear correctly, Tila might correct me, but I think you wanted to retain the $128 fee for an appeal to the hearing examiner.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's already, I think Tila's already got that.
Is that reflected in ordinance number 21-370?
In the 2022 fee schedule as uploaded, the appeal fee was $136 or whatever, not the correct amount of $128.
Okay,
So I
then,
think at that point, since it had to be an amendment.
No, we can make it as
noted. Okay.
What the $128 as we had discussed. I think our city attorney can chime in if we need an amendment, but I think since we discussed it and we all understood it was going to be 128, and you're going to change it to 128.
Yes.
It can be 128.
Okay.
I'm seeing the
Mayor,
city attorney nodding her head. Yes.
Yep, I hear consensus.
Yeah. All right. So then the motion should be is to approve resolution number 21-370, our adopting our 2022 fee schedule with that $128 change to appeals.
So moved.
Yeah, the motion's already in front of us. I'm just clarifying the motion. All right. If there's no further discussion, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Kugler?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember File?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Kane?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
The resolution passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Next item on the agenda is to authorize the city manager to execute amendment number 3 to contract 21-C 2678 with PRR Inc. In an additional amount of up to $30,000.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're reading off the consent agenda.
Oh, I guess I am. So thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is Planning Commission appointments presented by the Community Development Director, Ms. Mint.
Well, I am not Ms. Bent, but I will be presenting this evening. Good evening, Mayor Baker and members of the City Council. So we are looking for direction tonight on how the council wishes to approach filling the 4 Planning Commission vacancies that will come up at the end of this year. You have several options. One, you could reappoint existing commissioners, although I will say that one commissioner, Suzanne Greathouse, has already advised us that she's going to be leaving the commission at the end of the year. Another option would be to hold interviews, either including existing interested commissioners or only new candidates. Or you could appoint from the 3 alternates, which you chose in December 2020, and then interview for the remaining position or positions. So last week, a council member asked about the feasibility of having 9 planning commissioners, and we had the city attorney check state law about that. It would expand the commission by 2 positions. It would be okay under state law, although it would require a municipal code change. And also in the course of reviewing the state law, the attorney advised us that the terms should be for either 4 or 6 years rather than the 3 years that we have been operating under. So that also would require a municipal code amendment. But beyond that, I am here to answer questions and help with your discussion.
Questions? We need to figure out what we're going to do. Councilmember Marshall.
Ms. Anderson, what do you think would be one of the best methods to appeal to a broader base of people?
Well, I mean, historically, we have advertised that there are open positions, if that was the route you wanted to go. We have an open application period that's advertised in various ways. And then once the applications are received, then the city council can choose who to interview. That's probably my best answer.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Since you did raise the topic of expanding to a 9-person planning commission, which is rather the average, and looking around us, I would like to consider that and have a broader representation of our city on the planning commission, possibly even greater diversity. I think that it would be a good opportunity to update our code and also have it be compliant with the state statute, which is the term period as well. And then I have a question about the term, how many terms can a person serve? It doesn't look like we have any limitations in our code.
No, there are not current limitations on how long a person can serve. There are limitations on how long a person, commissioner can be the chair. That was a change that the city council put into effect, I think, a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Since the issue was raised about more members and we don't have any information about that from other cities, I was just trying to look really quickly. Maybe Shoreline has 7. It looks like. Do you know what our surrounding cities have?
I think Kirkland has 7, but I do not know that for sure. That was from many years ago.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I frankly haven't had time to even think about Councilmember File's proposal, in part because it's I feel it's completely unrelated to the discussion that we were given in our agenda packet, which was how do we address the upcoming vacancies? Her proposal has more to do with the governance and structure of the planning commission, which is a fine discussion to have. But I believe bringing up that now with no prior kind of notice and time to really think about it and get input from the community is both a disservice to, frankly, I think the council and the public. And I think we need to know a heck of a lot more about that before we were to make those sorts of code changes. I also can't find an example, and I'd love to see an example of a planning commission with 9. I've been poking around our surrounding cities, and I can't find an example. And but anyway, getting back to what's on the agenda today, I'm fine with opening up, advertising the openings and doing some new interviews and seeing who's out there. It's been a year. There might be different people interested. Our current commissioners may still be interested in continuing to serve. And maybe it's time for us just to have conversations with folks and, and see if it is time to mix things up, see if new people are interested that are good. So I'm perfectly fine with advertising all of the openings and taking applications.
And I look at it as a perfect opportunity for diversity and equity to open up the application process, and let's do some interviews and see if we can't diversify it. Councilmember Kugler, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I guess I'm thinking about it more from like a procedural, structural, long-term philosophy. I think we should follow our guiding principles of having geographic representation from all parts of Kenmore. Ideally, we'd like to see that, and broad demographic representation. I think to have more diversity, we do need to prioritize new applicants and not necessarily legacy, and who is already serving on it. Although I understand that we want to consider experience. So, but I think if we are making a trade-off in terms of like prioritizing people who have experience while also diversifying, I would highly consider the expansion to 9. I don't want to limit ourselves if we feel like that's important.
All right. So I'm hearing people want to go out and look but the application process. And I think that's what we're here tonight to do. Councilmember Shrubnik and Councilmember O'Kane.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. Before we get to the interview process, the process that we went through last time was pretty uncomfortable. It felt like, to be perfectly honest, picking team members on a junior high sports team, with showing how many votes for each person, I found it very uncomfortable. So I do want to revisit that process, but I do totally agree that we should open it up.
Great. Councilmember O'Kane?
Yes, and I would agree with the process. There was the process during the meeting was uncomfortable. There was a gap there. So thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Shrubnik. I also, in the interest of diversity, equity, and inclusion, would be interested in expanding and really learning what the benefits are and what the standards are. I think this might be a good option or an item for our retreat to discuss at that time, because then we can have an opportunity to kind of go through this process where we're at now, and then have more time to scale up if we as a council, as a city, choose to move forward with an expanded planning commission. But I think it's good that this conversation be open and that we give it consideration, because it's I'd actually heard it from one other person this year, but it was it's relatively new, but I am open to it, and I want to thank Councilmember File for bringing it up, and thank you.
All right. Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Baker. So I just, we will go ahead and notify the existing planning commissioners that we're going to be opening an application period. And I also assume that we would contact the alternates that you had interviewed last year and let them know also about the application period. I think I'm seeing heads nod that that's what you would choose. And the last thing probably I want to say is that part of the process, and I think there was a change in process, had to do with the need to hold the interviews in open public session. So I don't know if the city attorney wants to say anything at this point, but that's something we could discuss with her.
Yes, and I definitely heard the comments from the two council members. I think we can consider the process with the limitations for executive session and hopefully provide a smoother process, but there is currently no exemption for planning commissioner interviews, or I'm sorry, assessment like you do for an appointed council member. So there's that distinction in the law. But no, definitely hearing the comments in advance, I can work with staff and we can figure out again a smoother process.
All right. So Ms. Anderson, you have direction there?
I do. Thank you very much.
All right. Next item, landscape management philosophy and practices presented by Public
Mr.
Works.
Mayor?
Yes.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. There was still the requirement of the code to update the code because our code is not in compliance with the state code for term definition. So it's going to take a code update.
Right. The amendment would be, I assume the change could be to 4 or 6 years for that term, and that would have to be an amendment to the municipal code that we would bring back to council, and should do that before interviews and assuming the new code, or I'm sorry, the new term, length of term. So I don't know if the council is ready to give direction on that score, or whether you would like to have a future discussion about that as well.
I'd be happy to make the motion to recommend an update to our code for a 4-year term for planning commissioner.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Motion before us is to recommend a 4-year term for planning commission. Clerk, please take the roll.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yeah.
Councilmember O'Kane?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember File?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Next item on the agenda is landscape management philosophy and practices. Public Works Operation Manager, Mrs. Gordon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Great. I am going to share my screen here. Can everybody see my presentation?
We see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so tonight I'm going to be talking about kind of a general landscape and grounds management philosophy and practices that the Public Works operations and, well, the Public Works in general kind of follows. So I'm going to start off with, let's see here. There we go. What is, what are we managing when I'm talking about landscape grounds and, landscape and grounds management. You might just think of, we're just talking about landscape beds and turf, but really grounds maintenance is a lot more than those items. We're maintaining, landscapes and grounds and parks, right-of-way vegetation, surface water facilities, and facility grounds. And each of those different locations have some similar areas of maintenance, while the others have some kind of unique things. So, the things you're thinking about perhaps are manicured landscapes, natural vegetation areas, the athletic fields, open spaces, open turf areas. But we're also taking care of, the playgrounds, picnic shelters, benches, trees, hardscapes, parking lots, stormwater facilities, garbage and recycling, fencing, signage, all those things encompass, grounds management. So when we're talking about pests in the landscape and grounds, pests are an organism that competes with our interests. So we're talking about weeds, insects, diseases like fungus, viruses, and then animals. When we talk about pest control, there's a term called integrated pest management. And integrated pest management, also shortened to IPM, is a science-based decision-making process. And so it's not just it's really encompassing a lot of different things that incorporate into your decision-making process. And so you're taking the information from the pest itself, the environment, managing the damage that you see, the visual damage, and doing this all minimizing both the economic cost and the risk to people and the property. It's a holistic approach to pest and disease control. And IPM program relies on lots of different common sense practices. The City of Kenmore, we've had a integrated pest management program manual since 2010. I developed it when I came on board. I started the city in 2008 and created this document that I recently updated just in September. There's not much that has been updated, with the exception of some of the information on some of the more popular noxious weeds that we have in our area. Although I only developed this in 2010, the city has been following IPM practices since incorporation in 1998, when we were still using City of Lake Forest Park for our public works services and parks maintenance, right-of-way maintenance. So they had already been following those practices when I came on board in 2008. The IPM manual describes our philosophies and practices in much more detail than I'm going to go over tonight. So if you have further questions or want to know more about it, I would suggest diving into the Integrated Pest Management Program Manual, which is 16 pages long. So it's not, a super long read or anything like that, but it does go into much more detail. And in general, the philosophy of an IPM program is to use pesticides sparingly and only as the last resort. An IPM program is kind of this constant, kind of circle of life, if you will. It's about kind of identifying your plants, identifying your pest, identifying how big the problem is. It's about evaluating what the tolerance levels are. So, you know, what is the level of infestation that I can handle before it's time to do something about it? And then there's the prevention, which is, you know, what can I do to prevent this from happening in the first place? Taking you into action when you're developing what you're going to do to take care of this issue. And you're going to document, make notes, keep records, and then you're going to continue to monitor and re-inspect and evaluate. So it's kind of a constant circle you're going in and evaluating and keeping an eye on things that are coming up as issues. The different IPM methods of control include cultural, which is the manipulation of the environment. And I was going to give you some examples. Some examples of cultural control would include something like, you know, is the plant getting too much water? Is it getting too little water? Is it getting too much sun, too little sun? Biological control is the use of living organisms. So that would include something like, you know, ladybug larvae love aphids. So if you want to control aphids, which aphids aren't necessarily a big, huge problem, but if any of you have had any issues with like a tree that has an infestation of aphids, their waste is called honeydew, I guess you call it honeydew. And it's like a sticky syrup. And so if you have a tree that's infected with aphids, you might notice that you've got like just a sticky walkway or so that can be kind of annoying. So something you could do to get rid of aphids would be to use ladybug larvae to control those aphids. A mechanical method of control is physically controlling. So that would be removing the plant, whether that's removing weeds or maybe you're just removing it and getting it out of that situation because it's just not the right spot for that plant. Or you could even be removing insects, and an example of that would be maybe like tent caterpillars. You see tent caterpillar nests in trees, and typically it's on a branch. I mean, sure, there could be trees that are infested with multiple nests, but lots of times it's just one nest and you could just prune that branch out and get rid of that infestation. And then there is chemical control, and that would include using pesticides. So what is a pesticide? A pesticide is a chemical or other agent used to kill or otherwise control pests or protect from a pest. And I want to make clear that the term pesticide is really an umbrella term for insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, and bactericides. So often people like put pesticides into one category, and usually when I'm talking about something specific, I'm going to specifically talk about an herbicide or a fungicide or something like that. So pesticide is really that blanket term. In an IPM program, pesticides will only be used when there's no other feasible methods that exist that will control the pest within the realities of the location, site conditions, budget, available staff resources, and other relevant considerations. And pesticides are an element of an IPM program. One of the things is that pests are typically an indication of other problems within the landscape. And so we want to ask ourselves a lot of questions when we come upon a pest infestation. And I did want to note that our biggest problem in Kenmore in the city's operations, the biggest problem is weeds. I guess what we're talking about IPM, I want to go one step further and talk about plant health care and healthy landscapes, because I think that if you want to be going into the direction of being green, plant healthcare is really where it's at. And plant healthcare is just the concept, just is that concept is keeping the plants healthy, and having a healthy landscape keeps those pests away. It's just kind of like, you know, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's kind of a similar concept. People and plants are very similar. So keeping your plants healthy are super important to have a successful landscape. It's a comprehensive approach, and then it manages the overall health, the structure, appearance of plants in the landscape. You're taking the consideration, its ecosystem, and working with nature and not fighting against it. And it also incorporates the principles of IPM, but you're doing a lot more than just identifying the pest, identifying the plant. You're thinking about what can I do to make this environment the best for this plant to thrive. Some of the components of plant healthcare are knowing your plants, determining key problems. So knowing the plants and knowing what those specific plants problems might be, common problems, understanding your ecosystem, understanding and optimizing your plant health, employ IPM to manage the pests. So again, while IPM is this process of decision making, I want to kind of start with plant health care and providing that ultimate environment to have healthy landscapes. And then you're still going to be asking yourself a bunch of questions before you get to that last resort of using a pesticide. So how do we build that healthy landscapes? We build healthy landscapes by planning, understanding our climate, our sun exposure, soil type, precipitation, drainage patterns, those kinds of things. Selecting the right plant for the right place is extremely important. Making sure that you're selecting a plant, say you're going to be doing a full sun garden, you want to make sure that you're planting plants that are meant to be in full sun. You plant it full of plants that are meant to be in the shade, and they're gonna not do so well, and they're gonna die eventually. You want to make sure that your soils are healthy. That is like, the soil is food for the plant. It's feeding those vitamins and essential minerals that the plant needs to do its day-to-day functions. Understanding what the watering needs of specific landscapes and plants. So poor planning and installation is pretty common. And, I'm hoping that the direction we can go in is to, just improve in this area in the planning and the installation of projects. Kind of taking over a landscape from a new capital project is really hard. I don't want to say it's set for failure, but it's pretty close to it, because we've got landscapes that are being designed with the kind of the bare minimum. Landscapes are kind of the last priority of a project, and oftentimes are value engineered and reduced because trying to save costs. So let's cut those costs in the landscape prep, or let's cut those costs in the landscape plants. The fact that we have a small staff and we have lots of competing priorities, that equals lack of time to assist with the development of quality specs and plan review. And it's really hard to kind of stay focused and aligned with what's happening with those capital projects when you're trying to also do kind of your operations job at the same time. So it's just time for being able to do that quality review and planning is, you know, it's hard. We're subject to the low bidder, and while low bidder seems ideal from a cost perspective, the low bidder is not necessarily the best when it comes to building a quality project. And that's true for any part of any kind of capital project, you know, buildings, landscape, roads, all those kinds of things. The low bidder seems to, I hate to generalize, but oftentimes a low bidder, you know, they are looking for your mistakes. Essentially, they're gonna bid for what you have exactly spec. So if you've made mistakes or you haven't planned well in your you know, specifications, they're gonna find those, and then they're gonna charge you for those, you know, those mistakes. A lot of times the sites are not ideal, and you know, for instance, you're tearing up you're taking off all this awesome topsoil from an existing site to grade it, and then you're going to plop a new landscape on some glacial till and give it a few inches of soil and give it a couple inches of mulch and call it good. And you know, that's just, those are not ideal planting conditions. So you're you know, starting on a negative when you take these over, when you take these new landscapes over. During the construction process and during, you know, these capital projects, it's very hard to control the quality of the workmanship and the control of, you know, the plant quality and how it's being planted. Are they, you know, following all those steps that you have tried to carefully plan out in those specifications? You know, the landscape contractor is usually a subcontractor, and I, you know, in my experience, I've been doing this work for over 25 years now. And, you know, I haven't met too many contractors on capital projects that really care about what they're doing and care about the product that they're giving to you. It's actually very frustrating, extremely frustrating, because they just don't really care. They just want to plop that stuff in and have it checked off the list, sign off on it, and you know, they've done what they need to do to get that project done, but they haven't really done necessarily a good job to set those landscapes up for success. So then you get a poor quality landscape and you're transitioning from that construction to the operations, and you're not set up for success. So the hard part also about accepting those new landscapes is a new landscape requires a very intense level of maintenance in those first 5 years. And you could even say it's longer than 5 years, depending on how well the landscape was planted or how well the soil was prepped, how well it was planned out. So like I said, when some of these projects go in, they scrape off that top layer of nice soil, and then they put it in on some glacial till and give it a little bit of soil, a little bit of mulch, and call it good. You know, you're guaranteed to have really a long establishment period, and it takes a really long time to get those plants to a point where they're thriving. And so you're just kind of, you know, you're adding all these years of intense maintenance as you get those new landscapes. And so as we get more of those landscapes, we need more resources to be able to take care of those. So with a small staff, it's hard to ensure that those landscapes get taken care of the way they need to be taken care of, and or for them to keep on growing and thriving. So how do we build healthy landscapes in the future? Part of that is understanding what the needs and the wants of the community are. What are the ideas, or what ideas and desires are realistic for Kenmore, and do the resources match up? So communities asking for something specific, does it make sense? Does Kenmore fit that bill? Something that always comes into my mind, and I always thought this from day one when I started at Kenmore. I remember one of the first projects that went to council when I first started at Kenmore was ball fields at Wall Swamp Creek Park. And I was shocked. Honestly, I was shocked that we were even thinking about putting a ball field in Wall Swamp Creek Park. I mean, Wall Swamp Creek Park is full of wetlands and not really an ideal location for a ball field. And so really trying to understand what those projects, those needs and desires of the community, but does it really fit into Kenmore, and how do we make that work? And should we be forcing that issue? And the one thing that's common out of all these things is resources, making sure that resources match up. When it comes to the planning, design, and budgeting, what are the resources that we need to make this project happen? What are the resources we need for the capital side? What are the resources we're going to need for the operational side? And so a lot of times, as much as I've been harping this, as I say, this is my soapbox, is that the maintenance needs to be thought about way before this plan even starts. And so we get excited, we get these capital funds, we get these grant funds, we get all this money to do cool stuff, and it's exciting, but we always forget about what it's going to take to maintain those cool projects. What is it going to take to maintain all that money that we're putting into capital? What is it going to take to maintain it? What is it going to take to maintain it forever? And sometimes those resources don't match up. We've got all these resources to build it, but we don't have the resources to take care of it. So I guess I'd like to ask the question when we're talking about these projects is, how are we going to maintain it, and what is it going to take to maintain it at a level that, we want it to be at? We want to build successful projects that are built to survive, not just built to survive, but to thrive. Like I was talking about, these kind of setting up for landscapes for success, this providing the necessary resources and expertise to ensure the project is built correctly and functions as intended. And one of the things I always say is that I expect these capital projects to be served on a silver platter to me, because, well, one, I have high expectations, but two, I feel like that's what we've paid for. We've paid for this project. And so when I take it over in operations, to me, it should be perfect. I should just be able to hit the ground running and take on this. I shouldn't have to spend a huge amount of time fixing problems that I've now inherited that were from a project that's supposed to be complete and ready to go and beautiful. But that's not the typical scenario. The typical scenario is that I kind of have to accept what has happened, and now what do I do to fix it, or how do I make it right? And then, as I already mentioned, the lifetime of maintenance. So when we talk about these projects, we talk about putting in these new assets, these new landscapes, new buildings, any of the infrastructure or assets that we're going to take on. We are responsible for that asset for its life, until it's no longer. And so we need to be planning for that lifetime of maintenance. You can't just build something and it's good and you can just like wipe your hands and you don't have to do anything. You know, you have to keep on top of it. You have to maintain it, or you're going to have deferred maintenance, and then you're going to end up, you know, spending more money in the long run to, you know, fix something that you haven't been maintaining this whole time. Specific to the landscape, as I mentioned, that first 5 years is the most crucial part for getting that new landscape established and getting it to a point where it can thrive. And just, you know, maintenance, like I said, maintenance is forever. Maintenance will last the entire life of whatever that asset is. So where do we go from here? What I need from the council, from the community, is I need to understand what the level of service expectations are. It's something that I've been asking for kind of my whole tenure here, and I can create my own, what I think the level of service should be and what I think the expectation should be. But I really want to understand what the council and what the community expectations are. I need the opportunity for staff to develop maintenance and resource plans to match the expectations. So what is it going to take to give you what you want? So what is, you know, what does the community want? What do you want? What do I need to do? What is it going to take for me to fulfill that level of service that you expect? We need to improve the planning, design, and construction of projects. We need to, you know, we need to have healthy landscapes. Pesticide use is all about the balance between the level of service and available resources. And so if we can, you know, if you want things to be at a, you know, weed-free, never see a weed ever in Kenmore, you know, that's going to require a lot of resources. If you don't want to use any pesticides to be able to achieve that weed-free, 100% weed-free environment, then we need people resources to be able to deal with them mechanically. And what I need also is the continued reinforcement and support from council on the importance of maintenance programs. And I know that maintenance is, you know, it's not sexy. It's, everyone wants to, you know, talk about new stuff and building new capital projects. But, you know, for me, it's super important to take care of those things once that they're passed on. And I think that that's an important thing for you all and the community. And I just want to make sure that that message is clear. When you do your goals every year, I know I've asked for it in the past many years. I always bring it up at council retreats, how maintenance should be a goal, but I'm okay if it's not a goal. But, you know, I guess just getting the message to the staff and to the community that the maintenance is important. It's important. We're building these things, and let's really care about how we're taking care of this, putting all this effort into building big, beautiful things, and let's put that same amount of effort and support into maintaining those once we get those assets. So that's all I have for tonight. You know, there might be lots of questions. Happy to take questions or comments.
Councilmember File has got a question.
I have a few, but I'll start with just a couple. I'm certain that others have questions, I would presume, but I could be wrong. So what often is very helpful for what you're trying to ask for is more clarity. And it's not uncommon for young cities to start with integrated pest management plans or philosophies, but you'll get greater clarity with policy. Even the Association of Washington Cities recommends this pathway, and it's usually a little bit better for cities, and also transparency for our community. Is there any reason why you wouldn't welcome moving from a philosophy to a policy to help bring that clarity that you need?
I have no problem with that.
Okay. And the other question I just want to roll into real quick is about, well, I have two other questions. For park maintenance and helping us get there together, sometimes it's a really nice opportunity for businesses or nonprofit partners to adopt a park or adopt a roadway for regular maintenance. It gives an opportunity to promote their business or organization and benefit the city in a synergy kind of opportunity. And I think that would be good for Kenmore. I don't know if you would support that.
We actually already have those programs.
Me too. Well, what do you know? And then on the biological control methods, it's listed, but we've never really grown past talking about the pesticide or the pest, the handy pest for biological control methods. But there are biological control methods we have not yet adopted that some other cities have, like owl boxes and bat boxes, which help us work with nature instead of against nature and help us meet our pest management goals through more natural means. Is there a complication to getting that started in Kenmore, or would you welcome that as well?
I most certainly welcome it. I guess my question would be, what pest are you trying to get after with those biological controls?
Yeah. Well, with owl boxes, urban owl boxes, they can be very helpful with the rodent problem, like downtown, right? And with bat boxes, we do have a lot of swampy wetlands and a lot of standing water. Thus, we have a lot of mosquitoes, and bats are really great at devouring 5,000 mosquitoes a night, just themselves, one bat. So it can be helpful to our environment and our community to help work together with nature and the food web and reduce pests and those issues that we otherwise have to use chemicals for.
For sure. We don't typically do any applications for insects in general, with the exception of we do some horticultural oils periodically at Rhododendron Park to preserve the rhododendron collection.
Okay.
But other than that, we don't do any applications for any other insects.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember O'Kane.
Well, Jennifer, I just first want to thank you for this impressive presentation. One thing that comes through time and again from you, and actually many members of city staff, is the depth of insight and investigation and care that you take to the work that you do. I really feel like what Kenmore is doing, based on what you presented, is on the leading edge for landscape management, and I'm really impressed. I also want to tell you, that was a beautiful PowerPoint background. I just loved it. It just was so nice on my eyes. I do have a couple of things, just thoughts for council and comments for everyone that go a little bit beyond that. I get really excited about landscape management. It's a big part of environmental stewardship and climate action, in my view. So I would really like us as a council to really kind of find ways to integrate that into our climate action plan so that we can get more money for this. And what we get out of this, more investment in landscape management, is good quality jobs, long-term jobs that serve our community. They are green jobs. And so if we can look at this maintenance work that Jennifer has described to us as something that's important and a commitment to our community that improves the health of our community, it's a worthwhile investment. It's a long-term investment. And this is a direction that I think that we in Kenmore can lead the way and really do some good. So I want us to be able to get you the resources to do the top quality work that you want to do. And I don't think I'm alone, but I didn't know I was going to get so excited about landscape management tonight, but I'm like, wow. So thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, you're muted.
Councilmember Fowl, your hand's still up. Do you have more questions?
I lowered my hand.
Oh, still showing on my screen. Sorry. Yeah, it's still there. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilmember O'Kane. Jennifer, this is very impressive, and it shows how much you want to do the best you can with what you have for the city, and it's just makes me feel so good. And I've been the drumbeat of maintenance, particularly at Log Boom, for 20 years. And so this really resonates with me. It's super important, and it's how our city looks. And that's super important to our residents, to our businesses, to attracting new businesses. Super important, economic development, the whole thing. So I too want to figure out, what do we need to do? I was kind of hoping your last slide would say what I really want you to do tonight. But does it mean, being more careful about our RFP process? What does it mean? What do we need to do to build in the resources up front so that, and I like new shiny objects as much as the next person, but when we get a new shiny object, we are confident that you have the resources to do the operations and maintenance piece. So with that preface, I actually have three things I wanted to bring up. Okay. One is in the very first paragraph of the report, the Integrated Pest Management Report, it does say, although your slide presentation was a little different, it seemed to include wetlands, lakes, and rivers in that first paragraph as a description of what it covered. But your PowerPoint suggested it was sort of landscapes and grounds. So if it does actually include the waterways, I'm wondering whether we can at least by reference talk about the IAVMP, Aquatic Vegetation Management Plan, because it seems like there's conceptually at least an overlap there, and I don't want that to get lost in the puzzle. So I'm hoping maybe we can just add something about that.
Yeah, can I just make one quick comment on that?
Yeah.
So I would say, yes, they are included. I didn't really touch on it tonight. But when I refer to landscape and grounds, to me, that means, everything, wetlands included, critical areas included. The water piece of it is a little bit different and unique, but ultimately the same, philosophy is used there also, but there is a great cost for mechanical weed removal in the lake. So, it's a balancing act. And I mean,
right, the resources, right, yeah, absolutely come up in all of these decisions. But I just, it currently feels like we've got this one thing over here and this one thing, and they're not purposefully articulated, and just so maybe just some sort of reference. I have a specific question about blackberries, and then another one about climate. But so on blackberries in particular, it sounds, I saw two different things in the report. One was, use chemicals, sparingly and only in the infested areas and blah, 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 which, obviously. And then in another, it said, and we'll sign it and not let the fruit come back or something like that. I guess my concern is people pick blackberries. I pick blackberries. Many people do. And just want to make sure that the public knows if the area has been sprayed or treated with a chemical.
We do not treat blackberries currently with any kind of herbicides. We do a lot of mechanical control, and I guess I would just say to that, as far as for, unless you can have a very good continued mechanical control method, in order to get rid of blackberries, you would need to use an herbicide.
Yeah, understood. If we really wanted to 100% kind of.
Yeah. And if we were going to be doing that, it would be like we would cut it and spray it. We wouldn't be like spraying, the foliage and spraying, where, flowers and berries are going to be produced.
Okay, cool. And the last thing is, I think Councilmember O'Kane touched on it, and I had the same thought in general, that somehow I'd like to recognize whether it's in that management plan or somewhere else, that what we're planning for, we need to plan with an eye toward climate change. And I think you do that, but we might just want to have that as part of our philosophy in terms of the planning stuff. So that was a piece. And in terms of the levels of service, I don't know, you want guidance from us. I feel like I don't know how to give that guidance. Maybe there are some options.
Yes, I can give you some examples, but the easiest one to say is, well, what level of weeds is okay?
Right. Gotcha. Well, I have my own ideas, but I'll let other people talk now.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask and advocate for native plants. I'm thinking that those are going to be, in a lot of instances, the best in terms of the ecosystem and in terms of less of a need for pesticides. Our salal, our Oregon grape, sword ferns, Douglas fir, madrona, all of our native plants. I'd hope they play a big part in all this. And also, because after a proper establishment, hopefully when they get enough water, I think they're going to need less maintenance, and that would be a cost benefit of less staff time, and hopefully a bigger benefit to the public and a cost savings. So just thoughts on that, and please emphasize native plants.
I think we ought to get goats, a herd of goats in to control some of the blackberries. Councilmember File, you have more questions.
Thank you. So in asking a few questions of Jennifer here tonight, she was clear that a policy could help her have the clarity that she needs. There are some good example policies of integrated pest management policies, both land and water, that work together so they're not separated, and you don't have the loosey-goosiness of philosophy. And we can give her what she needs. I think what would be helpful is to have our city staff come back to us and prepare some example policies for consideration with your input, Mrs. Gordon. I think that would be very helpful. Would that be helpful to you?
I guess if you can, I guess, really tell me exactly what the policy would do for us.
Yeah. So, well, you're saying that you haven't had clear direction, and you've had direction, but not clear direction of what all that's expected of you and how much is needed. And we can have that defined in policy. And that's kind of the beauty of moving to policy. And then you do a great job of record keeping. So most of what you already have and do usually moves straight to like a website landing page as an update as well. But I brought some information to the last council retreat on a combined integrated policy and with sample policies.
Mhm.
Snohomish County council member Megan Dunn, who's an environmentalist, also weighed in on that. So I think it'd be worthwhile to take a more proactive approach and help bring that clarity that's needed and just nail it all down.
Councilmember Kugler.
I guess along the same lines of what Council Member File is suggesting, I wonder if Jennifer, if you might be able to suggest to us like different samples of levels of service, and maybe that includes photographs so that we have a visual of what that looks like. And another policy that I wonder might be helpful is you mentioned that sometimes you take over projects and you have to fix them before maintaining them. Like, are there things we might implement or require developers or, you know, to do before we sign off on it to make sure it's handed over in a good state? These are just examples.
Capital projects. So it's our own projects that are the issue. Because I don't generally take over things that developers have, you know, have built. So, you know, it's super hard because, you know, we do have good project managers. We've got good engineers. The problem is balancing out, like, you know, the hard part is really getting the contractor to do the right job. And so, as you know, we've had multiple times where we've had projects that we've had to sue the contractor because they can't do a good job. And so, you know, it's also a balancing act for the project managers to, you know, how much time and effort do you spend on trying to make sure that they're doing it accurately and correctly? And it's like, it is a balancing act. It's nothing as kind of take what you can get. And sometimes, you know, like I'm just thinking of, you know, the hangar, the town square and the hangar, you know, that contractor was really difficult. It was pulling teeth to do a lot of the different things. And, you know, at the end of the day, you have to decide, okay, how much time and effort am I going to spend on trying to get them to do that, fix it right, when I just say, okay, I'm done and let's just sign up on the project and I'll fix it after they're gone away, because it's just, you know, like I said, how much time do you spend on trying to make that work? And so that's like the complications of having a low bidder and getting some poor quality work is it's all, you know, some of the stuff is not necessarily in our control, you know, it's state law. And so I don't know if I have any really great ideas or solutions on how do we try to fix that. But tell you what, it's a problem.
All right, any other questions? If we don't have any at this point, then we need to move on. And thank you very much, Ms. Gordon. That was
Thank
a
you.
really good presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Oh, not a problem. Next item on the agenda is compensating DEI task force members. Mr. Carlinzy.
Good evening. We're doing staff report right now, right?
That's right.
All right. I'd like Stephanie Lukash to go first. She has a update on a few things.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate it. Had 3 updates for all of you. So excited to share with you the direct cash assistance for ARPA. Last week was our first week up and running fully. 25 households were served and $22,000 was given out to our families in need. So I just wanted to share that with you. We'll be receiving on Tuesdays full reports every week now that we're in the full implementation. So look forward to sharing with you regularly as we go. But just wanted you to know we're $22,000 has already been issued in checks this week. So, and I know that Carmin was here from the Northshore Schools Foundation. They've been a terrific partner so far. Just wanted to let you know that was happening. And then secondly, this Friday, we have 2 applications for grant feasibility studies, grants for an aquatic, to try and bring an aquatic center to Kenmore. And just want to thank everyone for your support and help with the letters of support. And we're working closely with our sister cities of Kirkland on one application and with Lake Forest Park and Shoreline on the other. So that work is underway and we'll be submitting those applications on Friday. So just wanted to let you know that's the status on that. I know that's we've talked about that before here. Very hopeful. I think we have really strong applications. And some of our best letters are from our swimmers and the coach in Kenmore High School. I think the testimonials to tell the story like no one else can. So I'm just looking forward to submitting those applications. And then thirdly, November 1st is the ARPA listening session. The Eventbrite is up and running. So please come and participate with our community, listen with our community as we have an ARPA session and talk about the effects of the pandemic on Kenmore. Please spread the word. And we have Shannon Kelly Ray, who is our, as you know, our DEI consultant, who's going to be facilitating that session for us. And just really want to spread the word. We invite every resident of Kenmore to come and join us that evening and share their experiences. This is a session for our community. So those are some key updates. Happy to take any questions before I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Carlinzy.
Thank you. So I need to, first of all, apologize because what I'm about to do is I'm bringing up something pretty late in the game that I should have brought up a few months ago. It's something that I've actually been thinking about for a few months, but I just keep forgetting to bring it up. And that is the question of whether you want to provide some sort of compensation for the DEI task force. So we're actually recruiting for DEI task force members now. And so if we choose to compensate, we may need to like pause the process for a second and then restart it, re-advertise it with the compensation. But I have been noticing that other jurisdictions, I don't know that if it's like super common, but I think it's becoming more common for jurisdictions around us to provide some form of compensation to their committees and commissions. The idea behind that is to remove another barrier or barriers to participation. So there, for example, if you might have people that are interested in applying for a committee, but say, you know what, I'd have to get a babysitter, or I'd have to take off work, you know, to be on that committee. Oh, I can't afford that, so I'm not going to apply. But if you provide some sort of compensation, then that removes another barrier to participation. So I was on the King County Public Safety Advisory Committee that you all know about, and they did compensate community members. They didn't compensate me because I was on city time, but they compensated volunteer community members, and they gave them a stipend. It was a flat amount rather than an hourly rate. Hourly rate triggers payroll, paperwork, and all that stuff. But if it's a stipend, it's much simpler to process. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. Want to get your thoughts and give me direction.
Is that something we should do for the planning commission also?
You can look into that. I'm recommending that you do the DEI task force first as kind of a pilot. And then we can research whether or not it could apply for other committees and get back to you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, labor should be compensated. I'm totally in favor of this, and I appreciate the city manager bringing it forward.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Totally agree. I know the county, tries to compensate volunteers that are on task force as well. So, I mean, I really appreciate bringing it forward as well. It seemed like the amount that I think you suggested, and maybe that was just in an email, was a bit high. What I'm trying to remember is, what are we expecting of this task force? Is it like, I know it's time limited, I think. And is it the frequency of meeting? I'm just not remembering what the responsibility level is.
Leonora Palanya, our HR manager and DEI manager, she's on the call here. Leonora, what do you think? The task force would probably meet a couple times a month for about a year, I would imagine, but your thoughts?
Yes, about, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let me turn on okay, there we go. So we're looking at potentially perhaps 3 times a month or so.
I guess what I was asking is, how long are these meetings? Are they like sort of like ours, like a couple hours, that kind of thing?
No, they should no more than an hour or so.
Oh, okay.
I
then
see them going 2 hours.
Less than what was in the email, for sure.
Or potentially longer on occasion, if need be.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember File.
Well, just to answer that question, I'm thinking about the financial sustainability plan task force, and their meetings were a couple hours long.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. So, I support the idea, and I think it's, a great opportunity to help reduce socioeconomic barriers to participation. But where there was a comment about planning commission, there's actually code in the statute that does not allow you to compensate planning commissioners. So it's RCW 35.63.030. So it's specific. It's a state code that probably should maybe be revisited at the state level. But that being said, I think anything we could do to help reduce barriers to participation is good, even if it's a stipend or an honorarium fee that is optional if people want to opt in or opt out. And are we also considering transportation to, like an ORCA card? I know, having worked on some diversity and equity committees, those kinds of things were looked at. So I like that idea, and I think we could move along forward with that.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Do you have enough information, Mr. City Manager?
Well, one thing, so there's a couple options. One is you could make a decision and give me direction tonight, or you could have us research what other cities do and come back to you. If you did that second option, we probably would need to do a pause to the DEI recruitment and kind of delay the whole process a bit. I do know Leonora has, I gave Leonora notice of this like on Friday. So she hasn't had time to go and ask other cities, but I do know that the PSAC that I was on, they compensated their committee members at $125 a meeting. That's just one reference point.
Are you getting applicants for the committee? You are getting applicants.
Yes, we are.
Okay, Councilmember O'Kane and then Deputy Mayor.
So City Manager, are you recommending what, I mean, I think 125 per meeting sounds fair. And I just want to thank you for bringing this forward. DEI work in particular is a good place for us to begin with compensating for committee work. I'm glad that this has come up, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I'd be comfortable if we are able to come to an amount tonight to move forward. I'd like to get this moving ahead sooner than later. But if we, you know, if you're concerned about the amount not being enough or too much, I think 125 sounds like a reasonable amount of compensation for a, I would probably guess 2-hour meeting in general, just based on the way meetings go and the importance and depth of this work.
I mean, I would propose that this is something that fits within, you know, the budget that we already have established for this work. You know, can we leave it to, can we give our general agreement that this is something that should be compensated, and then leave it to the city manager's discretion on where that falls after he's had some time to look into things? Because I don't know if I really know enough to pick one number over another right now tonight.
And I would back Deputy Mayor Herbig up on that.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and approve a stipend for the DEI task force members of no greater than $125 a month. And I would appreciate a second.
Deputy Mayor, you have your hand up. And City Manager, did you mean per month or did you mean per meeting?
Per meeting.
Per meeting? I'm recommending per month, having served on a number of different, I made my motion per month, as that's what is pretty average in serving on other committees that are, you know, smaller duration.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. We've gotten into discussion around something
please.
that doesn't have a second yet.
Right. And you have your hand up. So I coming to you next because there was not a second. And she said for a month, and the city manager is proposing for per meeting. So we don't really have consensus there. So I'm trying to get the questions out of the way.
Point of order, there's been so many interruptions.
Excuse me?
I said point of order.
There's been interruptions. Okay.
Yeah. So if there is a second.
There's been interruptions.
Yeah. If there is a second, I think we should give room for one.
I'm not hearing one. Deputy Mayor?
I lowered my hand, sorry.
No, it's still up there. That's what I was saying. So, Councilmember File, if you want to make the motion then for a month, let's see if we get a second for it. Do you want to restate the motion, please?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve a stipend for the DI task force for a stipend of no greater than $125 a month.
Is there a second? Yeah. I'm not hearing a second on that. Councilmember O'Kane.
I'm not sure if this could be a consensus or if it needs to be a motion. And I want to say why I am open to higher compensation for participation on the meeting. I personally, or I like the approach of saying, yes, we'd like to move forward with compensation for participating members on the DEI task force, with the city manager looking to the budget for what within our needs is the direction that I'd like to go. So that's.
Am I seeing consensus with having the city manager to come back with us? I'm seeing a lot of head nods and thumbs up. So let's have the city manager come back to us with an idea of what he's recommending for compensation on either a per meeting or a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Is that all right with you, Mr. City Manager?
I'm not sure if that's what Councilmember O'Kane was suggesting, but.
I was a little bit more broad. I was more,
okay.
If there's budget and it fits within budget and it's within the city manager's delegation of authority to proceed with allocating a certain dollar amount towards these meetings, I prefer just to let him go from here, let the city move forward from here without us having to approve a dollar amount at a future meeting.
Do I see agreement with that?
No.
I'm seeing some head nods.
Nope.
I'm seeing one no head nod. But the majority seems to say yes, move ahead with that. Is that direction you need, Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, and I can report to you what we came up with.
Fine. That would be good. All right. Councilmember File, do you have another question? No, your hand went down. All right. Is that all in the staff report?
Yes, it is.
All right. Next item then is council member reports. Start with Councilmember O'Kane.
Nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to urge members of the public again to go to and study and participate with the Planning Commission efforts on single family zoning and increased density in the zone. It's a very complex issue. There are a lot of questions that need to be addressed related to the whole thing, including the Growth Management Act goals, which I think require a balance. There are a number of potentially competing goals in the Growth Management Act. I think the whole thing means a balance, and that's what we're going to be tasked with. And that includes, according to the Growth Management Act, a housing element ensuring the vitality and character of established residential neighborhoods. That's one part, in addition to a range of housing options. And then another part is establishing for comprehensive plans to establish goals, policies, objectives, and mandatory preservation provisions for the preservation, improvement, and development of housing, including single-family residences. So single-family residences, according to the Growth Management Act, are to be preserved. In addition to looking at it, there's also language for duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes. So I think there's a definite balancing that is very complicated and intricate. We need you, the public, to please participate before the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Councilmember Kogler.
Just one quick update. There was an ETP meeting recently. I know Deputy Mayor Herbig and Mayor Baker were also there. We talked about improving access to SeaTac Airport, primarily from the east side, but given our location, we're sort of lucky that the light rail goes all the way to SeaTac Airport. One interesting tidbit that they raised was like the first last mile is a real issue for people to get to and from light rail and to and from the airport. And there are actually golf carts for the last quarter mile from light rail station to the terminal. And they gave some background information as to why they couldn't build right to the terminal, which was interesting. But hopefully we can see more use of light rail 37 million people drive in single occupancy vehicles to the airport currently out of 52 million. So a lot of single occupancy vehicles. And so hopefully now that Northgate is open, we'll see more ridership on there. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
No updates. I am wondering whether we have a second to look into the issue of ballot initiatives. I'm curious. I was going to bring it up in one-on-one. I'm curious why probably at some point in the past some council made a decision not to go in that direction, but just to get a little more background on that issue. And I mean, if there isn't a second,
one of the things I remember is the $35 to $50 million cost to put something on a ballot.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying, if there's a second person to bring back information.
Right, we have a second to bring back information.
Thank you.
So, Mr. City Manager, can you do that?
Yeah, I have a graduate intern that would be perfect for this.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Update. I want to thank our city manager, Mr. Rob Carlindsey, for writing a letter to the governor about our moratorium and helping him urge to come along with some other cities like ours who expended a moratorium till January. So I want to thank you. I know that went out today. Thank you very much for that. I know our partners and stakeholders also appreciate that. And I want to thank Councilmember Deborah Shrubnik for bringing up the citizen initiatives and powers of referendum. I was going to do that myself today, but you beat me to it. I think it's a good opportunity for democracy and ensuring citizen participation government when issues aren't being brought by either the council or the city, and to ensure democratic pathway to ensuring equitable participation. Let's see. AWC is hosting another meeting this week on the Blake discussion, and they're still having difficulty getting responses back from cities on the financial impact for municipalities. So, for example, King County has done a good job of responding to the request. Most counties have in our state. And so the legislatures are able to put a dollar amount to consider for the next budget. Not so for municipalities. So unless we are looking into the issue of how our courts are being impacted or how they could be impacted, what that dollar amount might be, and putting that forward, we could be cutting our feet out from underneath us. And so I really hope that that issue is being followed up. I know that we were going to have an update from the city attorney at one point or another on that issue, but I think it's important that we get there sooner than later. And the National League of Cities did a member spotlight for October and included me as their member spotlight. It was a real honor and an honor for Kenmore as well. So that was really kind of exciting. And it's a beautiful thing to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day with our first proclamation celebrating in the day. So I'm really happy to see where we're coming with our values as a city and walking the walk and talking the talk. So thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor.
The one thing I want to bring up is at ETP, we will be getting from ETP a new operating agreement from them that we'll need to agree to. It's no major changes have been made in it other than allowing Snohomish County to be involved a little bit more, but that'll be coming to us, I believe, in an upcoming, or will need to be scheduled for an upcoming consent agenda sometime in the next, well, before the end of the year, I believe. So just flagging that for everybody. Should not be a big deal though.
Yeah, the city engineer, John Vicente, is working on that, and I think it's getting close.
Two things. One is Sound Cities Association has put out a call for membership on committees. If I will forward something to everybody so you know what committees are open and what you might want to apply for. We will talk about this next week because we can't have multiple people from our city applying for the same committee because nobody will get selected. So we want to make sure that you're applying for committees that are open. Also, the National League of Cities is got a request for membership on committees, constituency groups, and federal advocacy committees. The first time around, you really need to get approval from Association of Washington Cities to apply for a National League of Cities seat. It's really easy to do. And if you want information on those, I can certainly get you information on the committees and constituency groups and councils that are open for membership, and that multiple people from the city can serve on. So there's really no big thing. The key is getting AWC approval the first time around. Other than that, if there's no new business to come before us, thank you all and have a great week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Bye. Have a nice vacation, Mayor Baker.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.